Welcome to part 6 of our live training session here with our sport front-wheel drive Acura Integra running on an Emtron SL8 standalone ECU. In our last tutorial, we worked through the part throttle cruise area calibration process. This is looking at fuel and spark timing and making sure the closed loop correction was working properly. Now we're ready to take a look at doing some full throttle pulls off of the wastegate spring. This is going to be the next step in the calibration process. So we're going to learn how to calibrate both fuel and spark timing using the chassis dyno and seeing the process from start to finish. We have a lot to cover. Let's jump in so we can check this out. Welcome back to our live training session here with our sport front-wheel drive Acura Integra. In our last video, we focused on the part throttle calibration process. This video, we're going to focus on our full throttle tuning. We're going to be doing this off the wastegate spring and getting a feel for what the engine wants for both fuel and spark timing. Now, this process is relatively straightforward. I was hoping to be able to include a knock sensor in the spark timing calibration process, which is what I always like to do regardless of whatever engine I'm working with. Unfortunately, I have nowhere to mount the actual knock sensor on this B-Series engine. It's a B18A engine. If you're familiar with a Honda B-Series lineup of engines, that's an older OBD0, OBD1 engine, and they did not have knock sensors on them. So unfortunately, there's no provision that I can actually thread the knock sensor in and tighten it down. The wiring is there for the car, but it hasn't actually been added. So that's something that is going to have to be done at another point in time, and we can't use that for dialing in our spark timing. That's okay. We're on a chassis dyno. I'll go through that process of working with lower spark timing and walking our spark timing up to figure out what is going to get us to maximum brake torque. There's very low risk of damaging the engine at these lower boost levels that we're going to run it at. So we're going to be off a wastegate spring level here for this tutorial. I have about a 10 to 14 pound spring in the wastegate. We'll figure out where that's actually going to be at in terms of the boost that we're going to build. And we'll just feel out everything in terms of our fuel and spark timing that we need to deliver to the engine to make it run properly. Now, a few things I want to jump into before we fire up the engine and start to make our full throttle pulls. In our main VE table here, we optimize things from 0 to approximately 100 in our efficiency calculation range. Remember, in our last tutorial, we switched our efficiency calculation from map over EMAP to map over barrel pressure. Now, we had to do this because our EMAP sensor was being odd. It was essentially having higher than normal pressure readings. When we would shut off the engine, the EMAP sensor was reading 130, 140 kPa. That's not accurate. I believe the pre-filter, that's a dampener before the actual sensor itself, so it dampens out oscillations coming from the exhaust manifold pulses. I believe that sensor might be clogged and causing that EMAP sensor to essentially get pumped up with pressure. It's almost acting as a check valve. I don't have the fittings here to undo that pressure dampener on the exhaust manifold side, so we're just going to leave that alone. That's why we switched our actual table here in the efficiency calculations for the main VE table to map over barrel. So that's more straightforward. Everything's working properly there, so there's going to be no discrepancies in terms of the efficiency calculation. You don't want to go into using your EMAP sensor as your efficiency calculation. It's part of your fuel calculations. If something's wrong with it, if there's some kind of a skewed data with that sensor, everything will be skewed and be off. I don't want to do that. I don't want to head into this video and just have do all the tuning process and just to find out that the EMAP sensor is being goofy and everything's thrown off. So that's why I just decided the last tutorial to switch it over to map over barrel, and that's where we're at. But we've calibrated everything here from 0 to 100 in the efficiency calculation. Now we're going to focus our attention on calibrating anywhere from 120 to 480 in this efficiency calculation. So we're going to go through the process here and see what it takes in order to dial this in. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to be using our closed loop fuel correction just as we did for doing the part throttle tuning and the idle tuning to guide us in making our changes into the table here. And we'll talk about that a little bit after we make our first pull, but the closed loop correction is set on our Emtron to be able to trim plus or minus 25% of adjustment at all operation points. So whether we're full throttle, part throttle, idle, it's going to do its job. It's going to start to trim, and we're going to use that data to guide us in making our changes, as we'll find here in this tutorial. Now, the next thing we have going on here is, besides our fuel tuning, we have our spark timing tuning. If we jump in here to ignition main, we take a look at our table here. This is based on manifold pressure. We've optimized everything in that last tutorial between 0 to 100 kPa. So in this range right here, we've optimized our spark timing. This tutorial, we're going to be focusing on our low boost tuning, our wastegate spring tuning. We should be anywhere between 180 to 200 kPa. We have these values at 14, 12 degrees.
our timing is much lower where we're going to have our wastegate spring or the baseline boost at. We've done that on purpose so that we're able to dial our fuel in first, then come back into the spark timing and start to walk our spark timing up. We'll figure out what is going to give us the optimized spark timing to get close to or reach maximum brake torque timing. That's where if we add any more timing, we're not going to get any more power or torque out of the engine. That's the optimized point. Now the engine is a 10-to-1 compression engine using this ethanol blended, race blended type of fuel. So it's E85 with 15% petrol race blend fuel. It has very high octane qualities, and we have the cooling properties of ethanol. So we're very unlikely to get any kind of knock activity out of this engine. Now, I don't want to go and just throw 30 degrees of ignition timing at it at this lower range of operation. I want to go and walk that timing in slowly, so we're conservative with this and we make logical tuning changes. Now, we're just focusing again on the wastegate spring level in this tutorial. We will be covering the higher boost tuning once we get into the next tutorial, turning on the actual boost control solenoid and going through that calibration process. This is just strictly sticking to the wastegate spring.
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.